$100,000 and she brought $10,000.
You cannot talk about ownership alone. The law does not say that because it is in your name, either as the husband or the wife, it belongs to you 100%. It would have been very inequitable and very unfair. He wouldn't be able to deny that at the law courts. Housewife, and has been taking care of you, washing for you, giving you food, and taking care of the children whilst you go to work and make the money to build the house. The court looks at that sacrifice of your wife.
Wow. No one sets out to marry their enemies. I mean, love is what keeps the world together and keeps all of us going. But then because of past experiences, sometimes people fall out of love. And even if they don't fall out of love, there are many issues that arise in relationships. And in this video, we are going to speak with Michael. He would introduce himself later, but I think he's one of the best people who is positioned to speak about this topic, marriage and property. Because of this very issue, today, some people, when they are putting up their building projects, they don't even inform their partners. What is the position of the law on all these things and more coming up next? So tell us about yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, Frank, for this opportunity. So my name is Michael Sodzi, and I'm a lawyer. I'm a quantity surveyor, I'm a construction manager, and I'm also a project manager. Currently, I also do some arbitration when it comes to construction-related issues. Yeah, so when I was growing up, I'd seen a lot of buildings springing up in and around the vicinities. I'd always been thinking if there would even be land for us to grow up and to build. But yes, I've grown and I've seen that there's even more land for us to build. But these are bedeviled with issues coming up primarily because people are married. People love themselves from the beginning. But things come up in marriage that affect their properties. And because people don't understand the position of the law, they sometimes find themselves not too happy about it. So I think this is a very relevant topic where we are going to be talking about what the law says about marriage and property. So to start with, I think that in Ghana, there are three main forms of marriage. The first one is the customary law marriage. And then we have the Christian marriage or the ordinance marriage. And then we also have the Islamic marriage. All of these are recognized under the law. So whether you are married under the customary law or ordinance or the Islamic marriage, there are varying positions, or there are varying principles that guide the distribution of property. So there are instances where people, before entering into marriage, come together to write down an agreement on how their properties will be distributed in the event of they separating or in the event of a divorce. So we call that the prenuptial agreements. It is not all the time that these agreements are enforced by the law. There are times that these agreements may not be enforced depending on the circumstances, and they also depending on what the intent is. So whereas it is generally not much practiced in Ghana where you have prenuptial agreements, if you have any prenuptial agreement, depending on the circumstances, depending on the factors which the courts will be looking at, it may be either enforceable or unenforceable. So that's for the prenuptial agreements. However, once you're married in Ghana, the law proposes that any property that you acquired during the subsistence of the marriage would be shared equitably.
Equitably, not equally.
Not equally, but equitably.
Please explain.
Equitably here means that there are factors such as your contribution to the property that is looked at by the courts. For instance, you could have the property in just your name, but that is the marital property. The law does not say that because it is in your name, either as the husband or the wife, it belongs to you 100%. The principle is that it belongs to the two of you equally to the extent that you can prove that you actually acquired it alone. Then the court would think that it is acquired equally. So there are various cases that shows that the courts are not just looking at the issue of equal distribution, but they are looking at what? Equity. So equity here means that everyone has some part to play, some role to play in the acquisition of the property. So if your wife is a housewife, and has been taking care of you, washing for you, giving you food, and taking care of the children whilst you go to work and make the money to build the house, the court looks at that sacrifice of your wife.
Wow.
It is very important, because if the court does not do that, then it means that she is laboring in vain, because it is through her labor that you can also sit comfortably at work, have your peace of mind to be able to bring money back home.
Wow.
So where a wife does all of these things and can prove in court that yes, these things have been done, then the court will look into it equitably.
So you said where she can prove that these things have been done. So what are some of the things that a wife can do to prove that she has taken care of the family?
Yes, so to the extent that he comes home to eat, his clothes are washed every time, he has food, and his children are taken care of while he is away, he wouldn't be able to deny that at the law courts. Unless, of course, there is overwhelming evidence that the wife was not performing these duties. So,
for example, if there was a house assistant, someone who was helping in the house,
yes.
Is it evidence that the wife was not performing the duties?
No, that person needs supervision. The person wasn't just taking care of the house alone. Your wife was at home, ensuring that the laundry is done, ensuring that the food is done, ensuring that you are fed, ensuring that when the kids are sick, they are taken to the hospital, ensuring that in the morning, these kids have taken their bath and they are taken to school.
Wow.
These are sacrifices that she has to do for you to be able to go to work. For instance, if she also has a job,
that's what
and she's also taking care of these children in the morning, whereas you might even leave the house earlier before them, that is a lot of sacrifice. Wow. Which is helping you, the man, to bring the money home. So when you bring the money home and you acquire this property, it will be very unjust, very unfair to say that you are the sole owner of the property when it comes to the issue of property distribution when there is divorce.
Okay, so Michael, let's pause here. Many a times it's like people say that in the event of a divorce, the man is at the losing end, and so marriage benefits the woman more. What about if the woman earns more than the man, and the man still struggles to put up a building or a property? Do the same rules apply?
Okay, so the same rules will not apply. One of the things that you need to look out for is that where your spouse, either the man or the woman, has not supported you in those hard times for you to acquire that property, you as the spouse, either the husband or the wife, should keep records. And it is the records that will prove to the court that truly you did it alone without support from your spouse. Because the court is a court of record, and so you need to prove that yes, you did it alone. In that circumstance, the court is also going to look at all the factors before coming out with a decision. So the court would look at equity. So what is equitable and what is fair is what the court would take into consideration. So you may be richer than your husband, or you may be poorer than your husband. at the end of the day, if he acquires any property during the marriage, it is important that whatever each of them have contributed to the marriage is taken note of when it comes to the property distribution. So you need to keep your records. That is very important, especially where you want to prove that you own that property alone. Yeah.
So, thank you. How about the instance where the woman puts up the property?
Yes. So where the woman puts up the property and then you go to court for divorce, in any divorce case, the court is going to be looking at, one, if you have children, the interest of the children, which is paramount to the court, because children cannot take care of themselves. They came to this earth by the two of you, and so once they are here, you are supposed to what? Help them, you are supposed to groom them, you are supposed to take care of them with the resources that the two of you are churning out. So where the woman has money and is able to put up the property, the question is, at any point in time, did the man have any contribution in that? That is very important. And so that brings us back again to what? Equity.
Okay.
So the court is ensuring that both parties, either the man or the woman, is treated equitably and fairly.
Okay. So one thing I've been hearing a lot, I don't know if it's a misconception or not, is that when there's a divorce, the property must be split 50-50. Is that the case in Ghana?
So that is not the only case. So I would give you an example of this case, Mensah versus Mensah. It's a 2012 case that was decided by our Supreme Court.
Okay.
So Mensah and Mensah were married for a long time. And during the marriage, they were able to work together, to have money, and then to build a house. You will note that in Ghana, usually when property is being acquired during marriage, you would see that maybe it's the man's name that is on the documentation. So they owned several properties, including their marital home.
Okay.
And all this came out of the two of them collaborating to building this property. Now, when they decided to divorce, the question before the court is to whether or not his wife had any claim to the property, noting that the property was in the name of Mr. Mensah.
Okay.
So the court, in delivering judgment, looked at all the circumstances, looked at equity, and then looked at when this property was acquired and the contribution of both parties. And in that case in particular, the woman took care of the children, he took care of the home, whereas Mr. Mensah would also sojourn to go and bring money. And so all this put together helped him in building that house. So it would have been very inequitable and very unfair for the court to say that to the extent that he has his name on the documentation, the property belongs to him alone. Okay. And so in that case, you would do a 50-50. Unless, of course, there's evidence to the contrary, that maybe she contributed just 40% or she contributed just 10%, in which case the court will look at all those circumstances to come out with what? Fair distribution of the property. So it is not stuck in stone that once there is divorce, property is going to be shared 50-50. Okay. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the contribution of each party. And it depends on the evidence before the court. So that is how the court looks at divorce in Ghana.
Wow, thank you. So what if one partner started the development of the property before entering into marriage and then completed it after marriage? How does the court view this property?
So again, the court is going to look at your contributions.
Okay.
To the extent that the land was acquired before marriage and the parties started building before the marriage, then it means that there's a greater percentage of that going to go to the party that started the property before the marriage.
Okay.
And if there was any agreement, the premarital agreement, which we call the prenuptial agreement, depending on the circumstances, it may be enforced.
Okay.
That one can be enforced depending on the circumstances. However, again, the court is going to look at everyone's contribution to that. So if at the end of the day he started it or she started the property and completed it single-handedly and can prove that, yes, I started it, and even when we were married, I ensured that I completed without contribution from the other party, then you can have that property. But to the extent that the other party also came in and supported you, maybe you had just completed with the foundations, or you are just at the lintel level, or you have roofed it, and the other party supported you with funds or with anything that helped you in completing the building, then at that stage, you cannot talk about ownership alone. Okay. So the court again will look at the circumstances, will look at the contributions by each partner to come for a determination.
Okay, so looking at the ratios of the contributions where you just left off, assuming I put up a structure together with my wife, she supported, and the total value that we spent was, let's say, $100,000, and she brought $10,000, right? At the point where the court is deciding, well, they say, okay, this is 90 to 10, so let's split it 90 to 10, or other factors can be considered.
Sure. So the thing is, what is the value of the $10,000 in the whole project? So it could be that you got to a point where you had no funds at all to complete that project.
Yeah.
And that 10,000 is not only 10,000, buy maybe a few thousand and then just doing painting. Okay. But there are other things that she may have done, or your partner may have contributed, which can be measured. And so it is not the case that because you brought 100,000 and out of that 100,000, your partner brought 10,000. And so you strike a 90 to 10. That is not how the court works. Okay. The court system is going to look at every circumstance that has contributed to the completion of the project.
Amazing. So another question that comes up is, what if in the process of the marriage, right, I inherited a property? Say my dad passed away, bless his soul, in 2019, and then he had estates. So I was a beneficiary of one of his, let's say, properties. In this instance, if there's a split, how would the court view that? Because this is not something we developed.
Okay. So it depends on how or which part of that property you have acquired. If there's an inheritance, and for that matter, it is in your name, and you own it fully, and the family has nothing in that property, because usually you know that in Ghana we have various ethnic groups, and sometimes when you inherit, it has to continue in that chain.
Okay.
In that case, you cannot add that fully to your estate to be distributed. Okay. But where it has been passed to you and you fully own it, then that can be added to your estate. But to the extent that it is not something that he or she has contributed to, then that can still be in your name. Okay. Unless, of course, during your marriage, he or she, I'm talking about your spouse, has had some contributions to make to the improvement of that property. But you have to understand that in the land law, if there's family land and you go and improve it, it does not belong to you. It still belongs to what? The family. And so all of that has to be taken into consideration. But to the extent that it devolves onto you and you own it, and it is in your name, you can add that to your estate. But when it comes to distribution during divorce, the court will take into consideration the fact that that was an inherited property, and the fact that there has been no contribution from your wife or your husband towards that. And so that cannot be distributed when it comes under divorce, because in divorce, it is properties that are owned by yourself that the court takes into consideration. If it is not your property and it's family property, it doesn't come under the subject of distribution.
Okay, really insightful. So I have another question. I have a lot of questions actually.
Please do.
And before we even came to this interview, I posted on my community questions that people wanted answered. So when it comes to the splitting or distribution of the property in the event of a divorce, how does the court view different types of property? So let me explain. There's a personal residential property. Then there's maybe a commercial property you are either renting or using for Airbnb. And then let's say there's something like a hotel that is bringing in revenue. How does the court view these three?
Okay, so you are talking about the classes of assets and how the court will view it.
Yeah.
For the court, the most important thing is that is it your property?
Okay.
If it is your property, when was it acquired?
Okay.
And if it was acquired by the two of you, what is the contribution of both parties?
Okay.
So the court will look at the circumstances of each of these properties, and then based on the evidence before them, it will be distributed accordingly.
So let's say we have just one house.
Yes.
And she took care of the children. I got my money, we did it. And there's a divorce. What happens to the house?
Yes, so once there's a divorce, the first principle is that you're going to be sharing that equally.
Okay, so let's say it's a 4-bedroom house. How do we share it equally?
Yes, so equally here means that either you can sell the property,
okay,
and the proceeds shared equally, or one of the parties can decide to buy the other party out.
Wow.
So if it is 100,000 valued property, then if we come to 50-50, then it means that your spouse may offer to buy you out, or if there is disagreement on value and etc., you could have independent valuers looking at that. The property may be sold and the properties distributed. But in all of these cases, if there are children involved, the court is going to look at what? The welfare of the children. That is paramount to them.
Yeah.
So the court will not allow you as the husband, let's say, to buy out your wife, and then where would she stay with the children? Okay. Because it is for you to provide for her household and the children. Household here means your wife and the children. Okay. You have to take care of them. To the extent that they are below the age of majority and they cannot take care of themselves, you would have to provide for them. And so the court will take this into consideration. But where you have no children and it's just yourself and your spouse, then in that case, you can look at buying out, or you sell and then you distribute it 50-50.
Okay. So this is in the case where there's one house.
Yes.
But we are living in the house. So if we are selling, etc., I mean somebody is living or we are both living.
Sure.
If we have kids, why can't we say, okay, 2 bedrooms is for the wife, 2 bedrooms is for the man, it's a 4-bedroom house, and then
Yes. You know, marriage is sweet, but divorce brings about a lot of acrimony. Yeah. You can't put the two of them under the same roof, where they are going to be going through the emotional pain and etc. Okay. So usually if you are divorcing, it is better for at least one of the parties not to be around.
Okay.
So if the woman thinks that, okay, she would want to leave the house and go and rent somewhere else together with the children, and that is acceptable by the courts, then so be it.
Wow.
Otherwise, if it is just one property, most often than not, the woman and the children will be there. The same way if you have multiple
most
properties.
Most often than not, the woman and the children would rather be in the house.
Yes.
Wow.
That's
not fair to men.
No, it is fair. It is fair to the men, because the court is going to look at what? The equity in it. Because at the end of the day, you have children, and these children are known by your name.
Okay.
Your wife bears you children.
Okay.
And the children are known by your name. Even your wife is known by your name.
Okay.
So it is not to the extent that you as the man is being cheated. The reason being that you have one property and you have decided to divorce your wife, For that matter, she is the one in the property. So the court is going to look at the circumstances. Again, what happened? What is leading to the divorce?
Okay.
So all of that is taken into consideration when it comes to the decision as to whether or not the children will be in. But most often than not, it is the children that are the heart of the decision that is taken by the court, because the two adults can fend for themselves, but the kids are of importance both to the court and to the nation.
Okay, so one question that people were asking is, does this apply to traditional marriages as well?
Okay, so traditional marriages are marriages where you marry per the custom of your ethnic group.
Okay.
So what then it means is that there are some ethnic groups where you can marry 2, you can marry 3, you can marry 4.
Yeah.
So that also comes up when the issue of property comes in. Most of these, when there's divorce, you are looking at who is being divorced. Is it the first wife? Is it the second wife? Is it the third wife? And where exactly, or what property is that wife or husband living in? So if the man has multiple properties and he has multiple wives, then it means that the court is going to look at the property in which he or she is staying with the spouse.
Okay.
That is what the court will look at, so that the court is not unfair to the others who are also in the remaining properties. But then you can also bring your traditional marriage to court for divorce. This is based on the presumption that after the traditional marriage, you have registered that marriage. Okay. There's provision in our laws that when you marry traditionally, you should what? Register. Yes, you should register the marriage. So you go to the district assembly, there's a pre-printed form there which you would have to fill. The family has a part to play in there, and that marriage would be registered. If that marriage is registered and there's divorce, you can actually go to the courts to ask for what is due you.
But if you register it, is it not moving into the ordinance?
No, it's not moving into the ordinance, because the ordinance has its rules and regulations.
Okay.
And the ordinance also has recognition for people who can preside over marriage, where that marriage has to be taken and where the vows can be taken, as well as even the regulation on who and who should be at that marriage.
Okay.
And that is a little bit different from what we do traditionally.
Okay.
So traditionally, the families will come together. There are items that may be requested from the spouse's family, that is the lady's family, which the man has to provide.
Yeah.
You get it? So in the divorce too, there is the way that it goes when it comes to the ethnic rights.
Okay.
So they also have a way of divorcing. But where you want to bring it before the courts for you to have some kind of relief from the court, then you should go and register the marriage. And then when you want to divorce through the courts, you can do that as well.